There are certain events in our life where there's an us before and a completely different us afterwards, as if there is a clear divide between who we were before and who we are after. I've worked on this topic through Neurographica, and if you want to know what results I obtained, come with me. Welcome back to the 4-Body Journey channel, and welcome to episode 5 of my series Diary of a Journeyman, where I show you practically what kind of results you can obtain through Neurographica by taking you with me and revisiting with you the flow or reflection that I obtained through my own personal practice, and revisiting with you the insights that I obtained, the ideas that I formulate, and the practical steps that I will implement in my everyday life. So today it's a very special day because for the first time on the channel I am going to be working on a case. So what is a case? Well, a case is a sequence of drawing on the same topic. So in order to explain it more clearly, I'm going to use an example. So imagine that working on a topic through Neurographica is like traveling by car, okay, having a car trip. So for the most part, for most drawings in Neurographica, what happens is that you start from a certain point with your topic, and then by the end of the drawing, you have reached the end of your topic. You have exhausted your topic. You have understood what you need to understand about that topic. And it's like a normal car trip where you get on in the car at the beginning of your journey, and then by the time you leave the car, you've reached your destination. So that is the equivalent. However, sometimes one drawing is not enough to exhaust all of the questions you have related to a topic, and so you go on a case. It's like a case is like one of these multi-day car journey that are quite common in the US as far as I know. And for example, I remember in one of my favorite movies, the first Karate Kid movie, where they travel from New York to California. They travel for a while, they get to the evening, they stay in a motel for the night, and then they start their journey again the following day from the same place in which they stopped the evening before. And in Neurographica, in a case, you do the same thing. So basically, you start from the beginning. With the first drawing, you reach a certain point, then you stop there, and then you're going to start the second drawing either right after or the following day or whatever, from the final point of your first drawing. Then your second drawing, you get to a certain point, and then the third drawing is going to start from the end point of your second drawing, and so on and so forth. Basically, it's like if the journey from the beginning to the end for a certain topic is this long, you're just basically dividing it in shorter, lengths, and every drawing will cover one of these steps, one of these parts of this longer journey. So a case can be a useful tool if you're working on a very on a topic that affects you very deeply and in which there's a lot to uncover. So this is the case specifically. In particular, we are going to be continuing to work on the topic that I started next week related to apathy. And what did I wanted to work on specifically this week? So if you remember in the previous episode, I mentioned that there are 3 categories of events that influence me negatively and that lead to apathy. One is, which is not something we're going to discuss today, is related to self-sabotaging, basically fear of failure. And in these cases, I'm going to be working on this in the future. This wasn't related to what I'm working on this drawing. However, the other categories were specifically related to external circumstances that influenced me negatively, and that is exactly what I chose to work on this week. So some of these events in particular, which were the ones I focused on, are sort of events that leave a clear me before and then a very distinct, a very different me afterwards. So almost if that event acts like a clear line that divides me before and me afterwards. And some of these events can influence me positively. For example, when I first moved to Australia to start my PhD, my English knowledge was good. Then by the time I came back for Christmas holidays for the first time to visit my family, a few months later, not many years, my English knowledge had become that much better, and I had a massive jump forward through just a few months of living abroad. So that is an example of a very positive change. It's almost as if those few months in Australia had unlocked something, and I had made a massive leap forward, a giant step forward through a very simple event. So this is definitely something that you want to have in your life. Unfortunately, some cases, instead of having something unlocking, I had something blocking me. So for example, during the lockdowns in 2020, I had one such circumstance. And also last year in August, for personal reason I will not discuss in this video, I also was blocked by these external events. And what happened specifically to me in this case is, well, I started to lose all kinds of motivation. The time, day and night and whatever, which day of the week it was, just became blur. It just became almost like a flow, a temporal flow, a flow of time that I was going through without any real desire to do anything, without any real desire to, live life as if I did before. It was just became a matter of enduring the time passing, and it is definitely a very unwelcome sensation and something that I would like to avoid. So my goal with this drawing that I made here, I'm gonna make sure to leave it larger for you on the screen, is twofold. On the one hand, I want to figure out why I am so negatively affected by those events that end up blocking me and causing me to lose all motivation and really set me back, and how I can make sure to both have them not appear as frequently and not influence me as intensely. And the second goal is to work on the events that unlock something in me, that influence me positively, and in trying to figure out how I can make them more frequent so that I can get more benefit out of them. Now, before I begin, there's an interesting note, something that has never happened to me before. Rather than having a continuous linear flow of reflection from the beginning to the end for this topic, I obtained some, fragments of reality, fragments of awareness from this specific drawing. So they seem apparently, unconnected, uncorrelated with one another. So I think what I need to do is I need to work again on this topic, work further in order to find what the connection between all of these results that I have obtained is. And the reason why I think this has happened to me is due to the fact that as soon as I started drawing, literally as soon as I put the first line on the sheet, I lost any connection with the drawing and with my topic, which is something that has never happened to me before. It was almost as if I did not feel anything anymore. I could, materially, I could practically draw, but it's almost as if I was not feeling any connection with what I was doing. It's almost as if I was, drawing mindlessly. I could not connect to that. And I started thinking, because it was something very weird, I started thinking, have I chosen the wrong topic? Maybe this is not the right topic for me at this specific point in time, but that was a possibility, but I didn't think it was the case, because before I started drawing, I felt really strongly this topic. Maybe the possibility is that this is not the right moment for me to draw. I'm not in the right mental space. Well, that's a possibility, but again, I don't think that's the case, because before I started drawing, I was motivated. I had the right energy, I had the right concentration, the right focus. So I don't think that was the case. And I started interrogating, thinking quite, as deep as I could in order to try and understand why this disconnect was coming about. And I even started thinking about all of these past events that, affected me negatively. And I even started to ask myself, are all of these events connected? Is there a connection, a correlation between all of these events, or are they just totally uncorrelated? There is nothing that these events have in common. They just happen to me, and they just happen to induce the same kind of reaction, the same apathy in me. So that was an interesting question, and I definitely something that I took quite a while to unravel and to figure out exactly what was the reason for this very peculiar behavior. Now, as I continue digging through my memories and trying to remember how I felt in these moments in my past, I realized something, that right now, it's almost as if there is a disconnect between me and reality, between me and the drawing and the topic that I am working on. And that is a very interesting realization, because it also made me realize that I was feeling basically in the same way that I felt in those moments in 2020, last year. So on the one hand, that is a very, significant issue, because if I cannot feel the connection to the drawing, then I will not be able to obtain any meaningful insights, and so I will not be able to make any meaningful progress on my topic and on myself. But on the other hand, this is a blessing in disguise, because if I can figure out how to recreate and reobtain my connection to the topic and to the drawing, then maybe I can have some ideas on how I can reignite the spark. And in this moment when I am feeling this loss of motivation and this, sort of apathy, then maybe I can find a way to reignite my spark and my passion for everything else that I do. And that is definitely something that, would be a very welcome result from this drawing. And as I continue thinking, I remember something, that both in 2020 during the lockdowns and last year, I basically was not motivated to do anything, but there was a single activity that I was actually enjoying at the time. There was one video game for each, of these two events, not the same video game, not even the same category of video games, but there was this one video game both times that, carried me through this quote unquote dark times. So with this activity, I had, some motivation while I was doing that specific activity, and it was helping me to, pass the time better. So definitely something that I need to figure out, I think, in order to obtain some meaningful insights. Something I definitely need to figure out is, okay, why that specific video game was maintaining my motivation? Why not anything else? What did that activity have that was so special that made it so that, it kept my motivation and it kept me motivated and it powered me through these not so happy periods? So in order to try to figure out exactly why I was feeling that way and what I could do to get out of it, I did two very unorthodox tests within, the practice of Neurographica. The first test I did was taking a relatively short break, around 5 to 10 minutes, and do something else. Now, whenever you draw Neurographica, usually, you sit down at the start of the drawing and you don't leave until you finish the drawing. You can take sometimes a very, whenever you need, a very short break, like 30 seconds to a minute, to go to the toilet or to drink some water, or to stretch your legs, just relax your arms a little bit. But as soon as you're finished with that, you just get back on drawing again and you continue drawing. But since I was experiencing a very specific and unorthodox feeling, I realized that I needed to do something different in order to get to the bottom of it. And so I stopped for 5 to 10 minutes and I started doing some chest exercises. Now, chess is something that I've been studying for almost 25 years. It's an activity that gives me a lot of fun. I'm not a master, but I have had my fair share of success. So it's an activity that has accompanied me for most of my life. And while I was doing these chest exercises, I was also observing myself. I was also, monitoring how I felt throughout that break, the little break. And what I realized was that I was starting to feel motivated while I was doing my exercises. And so the question then became, wait a second, why am I feeling motivated doing chess and not drawing? Is it an attempt for me to try to escape from reality? Is there something I don't want to face? And I thought about it for a little bit and I realized that that was not the case, because it wasn't the fact that I was escaping for something, I was trying to escape from something, but then I was gravitating towards that specific activity. There was something that activity had for me that gave me something positive. So now the question becomes, okay, wait a second, but why does that activity influence you positively and not drawing Neurographica? What's up with that? What is the issue? Why is, in this specific instance, chess such a positive activity for you at that specific point in time? So in order to get to the bottom of this and find an answer to my question, I chose to run a second test. So I set up a timer for 30 minutes and I stopped drawing. I had the drawing set aside for a while, and I took a video game and I started playing for 30 minutes. And the whole time while I was playing, I was observing myself, monitoring myself, and controlling how I felt, what I thought, and all that. And what I realized is that after a while, maybe, I didn't pick the right game, or maybe, I was just not in the perfect mental state. But after a little while, I started to feel motivated and more energetic and more focused. And what I started to think was, okay, wait a second. Why am I not feeling any of that while drawing, but I'm feeling that while playing the video game? And I realized that basically, that video game, first of all, gave me a meaning, gave me something to aim for, right? Something that I enjoy. It's something that I enjoy doing, but at the same time, it is something that gives me a meaning, gives me something to aim for. And that is a very interesting observation. So it wasn't as much the fact that I was trying to escape from the drawing, but the fact that I was gravitating specifically towards that activity. And this made me realize something, and we go back to a theme that we have explored in the first couple of episodes already, which is the fact that I tend to live my life very instinctively, very automatically, right? I do things because I, just do it. And there's no reason. I just do them because I want to do them, right? I study this topic because I want to study it, because I'm curious, not because there is a specific rationale behind, because I have a specific reason to. I just want to do it, and so I do it. Now, what is the issue? The issue is that when there are those external circumstances that come in, coupled with the fact that there are some things that I have to do, that I don't really want to do, but that I have to do, then this mixture creates a sort of a feeling inside me, a specific, state inside of me where I start to feel overwhelmed, where I start to feel like I don't have control anymore over my life. And that is what leads to apathy. So I think this is a very important conclusion that I was able to draw from these very unorthodox practices, these very unorthodox tests that I tried in order to figure out what the issue was. Now, the first conclusion that I could draw from all of this, reflection and thought that I had was that I needed to have the why well clear in my mind. So I needed to be very mindful of why I was doing things, what was the motivation for me to do certain activities. And while this is a good advice and definitely something that I still need to keep in mind because it's all useful for me to improve my life, it wasn't the right thing. It didn't instinctively feel like the right response to the kind of question I was asking myself, especially because I started thinking again about all of these negative events in the past, like lockdowns in 2020, that event last year, and I realized that I was struggling to find a connection, a correlation between these events. For example, in August of last year, there was a clear, event that, created the negative effect in me. But that same event had already happened before, and it did not influence me nearly as negative as it did at that specific point in time. And if you go and look at the lockdowns, there was not a clear, negative event. It was just a slow descent into apathy. So I could not find a correlation between all of these events. It was almost as if the only correlation that I could find, but then again, as I was thinking about it, it didn't feel like the right response. But the only correlation I could find was the fact that, maybe I was wrong before, and actually, those games were just a way for me to try to escape reality, to try to avoid having to face reality. But again, it was not the right conclusion, and so I needed to keep thinking longer in order to figure out what the real answer was. And so after a few minutes, I actually got the answer to my question, and it was the right answer. That was really a eureka moment, a moment in which I was like, yes, that is the point. And so what I realized was that the issue is not that I am living life instinctively, automatically. It's the fact that I'm living life passively. Okay? So whenever, there are external circumstances in life that affect me negatively, therefore, I feel like I have lost control. I feel like I don't have control over my life anymore. In the game, however, I have full control. Success or failure purely depend on me. And so, I have full control of myself, and there are no external circumstances outside of my control that can, throw a spanner in the works. And as I started, and as I kept thinking about this, I also started thinking about my approach in chess. And what I realized is that I have the best results. I play my best chess either when I force myself to think this way, or when I naturally tend, think that way in that particular game or games. Basically, I play best when I try to seize the initiative and impose my style of play. It's like when I start a game and I'm like, okay, we are playing this game on my terms. That's when I have the best results. Otherwise, if I play more, on autopilot, what I do is I have a strategy beforehand. I have openings beforehand that I want to play. I play these openings, but I tend to play them very passively. So, I just put my pieces where I want to put them, but I don't take my opponent into consideration, okay? I don't, try to figure out what he wants to do. I'm not trying to find for the common resources. And so the issue is that either when the opponent, wants to obtain these common resources, I just don't put up any resistance. Or if the opponent is like, okay, wait a second, no, we are going to play on my terms, not on yours. Well, then I'm screwed. I'm just a passenger then. I'm not, I have no control anymore over the position. I have no control anymore over the game. So that is definitely something that I need to work more on. I need to be able to have control over my life, over my chess game, over everything. I need to make sure that I have control, that I'm not, I don't become, dominated by other people. And just like in chess, in life, whenever I live my life, if I leave it on autopilot and then there are external circumstances that come in and that tend to affect me negatively, then I feel like I have lost control. I feel like I'm just a passenger, and then apathy sets in. And then I'm gonna try to, to find other activities like games in which I have that control that I don't have anymore in my life, and that gives me more motivation. So this was definitely a very important insight that I obtained, a very interesting insight that I've just obtained, and this is definitely, I think, the key to figuring out how to be less negatively affected by all of these events in my life. Now, as I continued drawing, the question that came to my mind was, okay, where does this passivity come from? Is it something that you've always had, or is it something that, you did not have before, but then there's been an event after which, you became like that? And what I realized is that there has never been such an event. I have always been like that. I've always, only focused on myself, never on other people. And this didn't come from a narcissistic view of the world that I had. I've never had such a view. I've never viewed myself as the only important person on the planet and everyone else is just second-class citizens. I never seen myself as the center of the world and all of the other people are just, a group of flying monkeys there for my own entertainment and to satisfy my needs. It was just the fact that, I have always focused only on the things I can control, so on myself. I never focused on other people because I could not control them. I can only control myself, and so I focused on what I could control. The issue is that when then external interference, behavior of other people come in, through, as external interferences through their behaviors and influence me, then I don't know how to react to that. And so what I realize is that I don't necessarily want to become someone that imposes his will onto other people, but rather I want to become someone that is, an immovable object. I want to get to the point where no one can impose their will on me. I want to become like a perfect metal sphere that cannot be broken, that cannot be deformed, that just sits there, and no one, if I take up that space, no one can take up that space from me. That's the kind of person I want to become. And at this point, the question then becomes, of course, okay, how can I achieve that goal? How can I, become someone who can obtain what he wants, but at the same time who doesn't become, someone who, runs over other people to obtain what he wants, but at the same time that does not allow other people to run over him and, maintain my position and stand my ground. How can I achieve that? Now, as I continue drawing, one sentence popped up in my mind that first came to me in the previous episode, which was being comfortable with discomfort. And I think this is a key phrase that still applies in this case as well, because there will be certain circumstances, certain situations in which acting decisively is the key to achieve my goals. I need to seize the moment. I need to act at the right moment with decisiveness in order to achieve my goals. What is the issue? The issue, well, is that I don't know how to do it. I've never acted like that. And so I don't know. It's not something that I'm accustomed to, and it's not something that I'm used to. At the same time, I am not used to defending myself, to standing my ground when other people are trying to impose their will on me. And so when that happens, when there are people that are interfering with me, then I don't know how to act, and I am on the back seat all of a sudden, because my strategy in everything, not just games, in life as well, is I have a goal that I want to achieve. I have a strategy. I formulate a strategy to achieve that goal, and until I have completed all the preparation for that, until I've laid the groundwork for that, I'm very passive in the sense that I focus on that, and I focus on every single step of my plan, and I don't focus on anything else. It's just those steps. What is the issue? The issue is that if something changes, or if someone else from the outside interferes, then throws off my entire plan, and that I'm at a loss. I'm in the backseat already. So my goal is to be able not just to plan for everything, but is to become able to act without a plan, to improvise, to act when necessary, just act instinctively, but doing the right thing at the right moment in order to achieve my goals. Now, of course, this change, this mental shift, this change in mentality will take some time and some effort to become, normal for me, because it is a pretty profound shift. Like in the previous episode, it's pretty profound and based, and fundamental shift. Therefore, it will require a lot of effort, but I think it's necessary because it will definitely help me to become a more complete person, and will definitely help me to become more resilient when dealing with such negative events in my life. Okay, so 3 conclusions that I can draw from the reflection that I just shared with you. The first one is that I tend to live my life way too passively, and so this leads me to not being able to handle external influences or interferences, and therefore this does not allow me to reach my goal, and I tend to be overwhelmed by these by the other people and by these behaviors, and then that leads to apathy, which is something that I definitely want to avoid. The second conclusion is that on the one hand, I need to learn and to be able to seize the moment and do whatever it takes, acting with decisiveness in order to achieve my goals. And on the other hand, I need to learn to become an immovable object. I need to learn how to stand my ground and not to allow other people to overwhelm me and put me in the backseat through their behaviors. And the third conclusion that I have reached is that this is a very complex topic that seems to go much deeper than what I originally thought. Therefore, I'm going to need to work on it a lot more in order to obtain answers to all of the questions that I have right now. Okay, so how will I tackle this problem practically? Well, I've decided to do two things. The first thing is that, if you remember last week, I told you that I was going to pick a hobby that was going to train both my emotional side and my mental side. Well, this hobby for the time being is going to be chess. Maybe in the future it's going to change, I'm not sure. But for the time being it's going to be chess. And what I will focus every time I play chess or I train chess or I exercise or whatever, I want to make sure that my practice is deliberate. So that I am focused, that I am present, and that I'm not going on autopilot. I am really concentrating on what I am doing. And the second thing I will do is I will set up some dedicated practice sessions, which might start from as low as 30 minutes, in which basically I can either train, I can study, or I can play, any of these things. But my mental focus in these sessions will be to seize the initiative, to maintain the initiative, to play the kind of game that I want to play, and not to give up the initiative to anyone else, so that I can train myself on being more, getting what I want and seizing the moment and achieving my goals. That will be my training. And at the same time, I will focus on making sure that I do not surrender the initiative to my opponent, so that I become stronger in not allowing someone else to impose their will on me. I will be the one who imposes his will. That will be the focus on my training. So at every moment of every session, I will want to make sure that my focus is on grabbing the initiative, seizing the initiative, and maintaining it, retaining it for the whole duration of the session. That will be my goal. Now, this is my solution for my problem. What if you have the same problem? What is your solution? Or what if you have a different problem? What is your solution? Well, that's where Neurographica comes in. Neurographica is a technique that helps you with a wide range of problems that you might face in your life. Do you have some events in your past that are negatively affecting you right now? Neurographica. Do you want to plan your future in a very effective way? Neurographica. Do you want to find $10,000 by tomorrow morning in order to go on holiday? Lourdes. Now, Neurographica is a very versatile technique, because you can draw Neurographica as long as you have some time in which you can stay focused. You can draw Neurographica whenever you want. You can draw before you go to bed, or you can draw during your spare time, or you can draw during your lunch break. It doesn't matter. You can work on the topic that you want, and it will give you the best solution for you at that specific point in time. I am a Neurographica certified instructor, specialist, and supervisor, and I organize courses in which I will provide you all the tools that you need to start applying Neurographica to your own life and to start obtaining, good results and changing your life for the better. Now, if this is your first introduction to Neurographica, I invite you to join my introductory course to Neurographica, which I call the Basic User course, in which I will provide you the fundamental rules of Neurographica, the basic principles of this technique, and I will teach you some very simple algorithms like this one, which you can use right away to start and changing your life for the better. So if you have any question, or if you want to have more information about my courses, you can contact me either through my social media profiles or through my email address. You'll find everything in the description. So with this being said, thank you very much for following along up until this point. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ad maiora. Oh, you're still here. I'm very happy to see that. If you want, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, or you can open this playlist that contain all of the episodes of this series, or you can watch this video. I'm sure you're gonna like that. The choice is yours. Have fun, and I'll see you in the next video.